Your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Welcome into the Ask Level podcast, episode number 25. Hit a quarter of 100 of these alongside Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. Appreciate you joining us once again. And we could call it another happy episode as Red Raiders most recently coming off of a win in basketball, a home win. Make that 2 in a row at home for Texas Tech. And, of course, lots of other news types of things coming out. Zach Thomas finally gets in the Hall of Fame. Patrick Mahomes gets his second MVP. Big 12, big news. Texas and OU will go ahead and leave the conference early. We'll get into all of that here and a few questions from you. First Level, how are we doing today?
Doing good. Nice to see the Red Raiders, finally get one after, just some tumultuous times but, just kind of, and against, I mean, a good team. Kansas State top, I think ranked 12th. Their net ranking was around 17 or 18. I mean, this is a legit 3 or 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. I don't know how Vegas has it figured out, man, but the fact that Vegas, well, they had Kansas State. They weren't perfect here, but it really told you a lot that Kansas State was only favored by like a point, and in some places it was a pick 'em. And I was not even sure who was actually going to play for you before that game, because I wasn't sure about Daniel Bacho and Fardaz Amak. I just didn't know what the status was going to be there. And so that part, I was like, geez, this is, you're going to have to try to match up maybe without really a true post or your freshman post player, players, I guess, and then maybe have lean on Robert Jennings. But anyway, but it was Kansas State. Like I said, they're really good. That's probably going to be considered a bad loss for them, according to most. But
probably
it's still difficult to win in Lubbock. I think Iowa State found that out, and Kansas State found that out, and Kansas State's another top 20. It's just if we go back to earlier in the week, I mean, you're getting kind of put away in Stillwater. I think Oklahoma State was up by as many as 14 in the second half, and Jeff Haxton and I are on the broadcast, and I'm like, man, it's starting to get away from you, and you just don't have a lot of firepower here to try to get back in it. But Oklahoma State, they're not the most prolific offensive team in the conference, and maybe one of the worst, as a matter of fact, but one of the best defensive teams in the Big 12. And yet you come all the way back and have a chance to send that to overtime or win that game, if not for a missed block out, which was just typical of your season, unfortunately, trying to figure out ways to lose. But, you figured out a way to beat Kansas State, and you beat a legit team. There's no other way around it. Be one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, I think, again, we could beat the dead horse here, but it speaks to the toughness of this Big 12 league. I mean, went through and looked at the net rankings level earlier this week, and these have changed a little bit since then, but looking through the net rankings of the lowest team in each conference, and the second best conference is the Big 10 compared to the Big 12, and their lowest team is still like 220.
Yeah,
Texas
and your lowest.
Tech, yeah.
Well, you were the lowest. You're not
anymore.
Oklahoma is now, and they're about 75.
Right, but 75. That's such a massive chasm there between the worst team in the Big 12 to the worst team in every other league. I mean, Louisville's in the 300s for the ACC. There's
Well, the best way to sum up your conversation is I saw this graphic on one of the television broadcasts over the weekend. You probably saw the same thing. Mm-hmm. The average net ranking of teams in the league, it's like the Big 12 is like 27th, 26th or so. The next closest was, I think, the Big 10, and their average net ranking was like 53.
Right.
And then you get into the 90s with your average net rankings. And again, for those that don't understand what a net ranking is, this is so much more important than any top 25 AP, USA Today poll or whatever. because this is actually the number that the NCAA looks at the selection committee to put teams in the tournament and how to seed them based on the net rankings, because it involves quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, quad 4 wins, but all the data, and it creates a ranking, if you will. And so that's really the most important ranking that there is. And it's the, you could be ranked second in the country, but you could have a net ranking of 18, whatever.
Yeah.
The net ranking is actually much more vital to your resume than what any kind of top 25 ranking would be. But and lo and behold, you get the seventh, I think, best team according to the net rankings dropping into your place for a little Big Monday game in the Texas Longhorns, which theoretically, and that'll lead us into a separate conversation later on in the show here, could be the last time that they are here.
True. Very true.
It could be the last time that they are here. There's no guarantees that they will make a return trip to Lubbock. So we'll get into that when the time comes. I'll explain when we go get a little bit deeper into the weeds here.
So as we kind of look towards the Longhorns, which, by the way, if you're listening to this later than Monday in the week, this game would have already happened. But the ifs and buts game, you could play it all the time of, man, if this would have broken your way, or just this and that. The what ifs part is endless for this Texas Tech basketball team this year. And I mean, just the thought of finishing up that conversation about the conference, if you're playing in any other Power 5 league, you could definitely make a case that Texas Tech's probably a tournament team in any other league,
or middle of the pack, certainly, instead of looking up at everybody.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably not sitting at 2-10 in any other league for sure. But
choice that I think what too is that, and look, people only care about results, and that's exactly the way it should be. It doesn't, this is a separate conversation, in that, winning and losing is really all that matters here. That they have struggled, they have figured out ways to lose. There is improvement being shown at certain levels, but it's painful to kind of watch how slow it's been at times, especially when you've been shorthanded, because one of the biggest issues with this basketball team is legitimately not knowing who's available game in and game out. Like the Pop Isaacs being out, the Fardaws kind of being in and then back out, Daniel Bacho kind of being hit and miss. And then, dealing with trying to, like, okay, what's best for us to run with this personnel versus what's best for us to run with this personnel. Because I think they will try to do different things based on who is available. And again, it looks bad at times. Excuse me. And I'm battling,
all good. The stuff. Yeah, it's going around. But real quick, there's a question on Bacho from the audience. Someone just asked simply in the game against Kansas State, what exactly did happen to Daniel Bacho? Why was he not in the lineup for the Red Raiders?
Okay, if I can talk now.
You're all good, man.
Sorry. Yeah, so sorry about that. I think lower leg injury is, I think, the official word. I don't know status of him going forward. Wasn't even certain that Fardaws was actually going to play versus Kansas State.
Sure.
But he did, and I think gave you 22 minutes, but nearly 23 minutes, and just scores a bucket and has one rebound, and so it was kind of inefficient, but at least he gave you some quality minutes, and he used up some of his fouls there, because he did have 4 personal fouls. And again, he had not played. I mean, half the games that he's played have been against Kansas State. So he had not played against or any games. He'd missed 5 in a row. The last game that he played was against Kansas State in Manhattan. But yeah, so where it goes, can Fardaws play on a Saturday, return on a Monday? Is his foot sore? Is Bacho available? Great question. I have no idea.
Sure.
But that's the status with Bacho.
So you mentioned the word improvement. We saw improvement from game 1 against Kansas State to game 2 against Kansas State. Tech played fairly well in Manhattan the first time around, but couldn't close out a victory. You do so in Lubbock. Texas, another team you played pretty well against on the road in Austin, definitely in the first half. Let the lead dwindle away and ultimately lost that game late. Is this a team that you look at and say, hey, them in your house, this is a very winnable game?
Well, I don't know if I want to say winnable. You're going to have a chance. I think it's probably in some ways good that they are here in just a short turnaround because you feel pretty good about yourself all of a sudden, and you've got some positive momentum, and you don't really have time to sit back and even appreciate it. You just you're right back at it. But UT is a bit of a different animal. I mean, I think I think when everybody's healthy. I think Baylor and Texas probably have the best rosters in the Big 12 conference. I think Texas they have a little bit of everything that you're looking for, as does Baylor, in my opinion. I think there's been some injuries and some different things that have kind of kept guys in and out of the lineup. But yeah, Texas just is an older team, and I think they'll be. I have those memories of the environment last year. When Texas came in here for obvious reasons. I don't have any idea what the environment will be like versus Texas. But again, if you get that game, you're going to be back on some sort of like NIT bubble or even on the outside looking in of the NCAA tournament, because every game that you're playing is basically a quad one game. And those are the hardest games on paper that the NCAA tournament committee looks at. You still have you've got to win the majority of your games left. I'm just saying, because of who you're playing here and how meaningful those games are with the data, if you win a couple in a row, you start to enter into some different conversations, even though you're still, as we sit here and talk, you're 2-10 in the league.
Right.
And I think you'd have to be at least 7-11 or maybe 6-12. I think, just because the league is so strong to even remotely have a slim chance. But you've got a lot of work to do to get to that point. But it's because of the wins that you could potentially get count extra, just because they're so.
I do.
But yeah, Texas is you played them to the. Right there to near the last minute in Austin. And I think you had Pop Isaacs. He played really, really well. You're not going to have him, I don't think, versus Texas. That's a big piece, big void you're trying to fill. But yeah, any team can be beaten, especially if you play well enough at home. And I think the Red Raiders, because against Kansas State, they've been to this point before. Even in Manhattan, they were at that point where they get to about the 5 to 7 minute mark left in the game, and they just can't quite finish it. Or like we're saying in Austin, they get to the last minute, can't quite finish it. But it's just all about giving yourself a chance and then hitting shots and making plays at the end. And they did that versus the Wildcats.
One more basketball question from the audience. This one from Brad. Says, why does Davion Harmon not go to the rim more often? Seems like every time he does, good things happen.
Well, and I think you could actually argue that there's times where he does it too much. And I say just, tries to, because I don't know if Davion is a natural point guard. I think that he is somewhat of a scorer's mentality. I don't know if he sees certain things like a point guard ultimately should, like off the pick and roll or trying to set guys up or help facilitate. But I think he's done a good job of scoring because ultimately your team has needed it. And I think Kansas State really tried to apply a lot of ball pressure on him because they know he kind of probes and he finds things. But I think Davion started to give the ball up and then get it back, which is what created some of his offense versus Kansas State. But I do think he goes to the rim, certainly in transition. But I think that he's not the smallest or not the biggest guy, I should say. So it's hard for him to get inside and attack the rim against some of the length and athleticism that the Big 12 offers up. It's just, because it can look really bad if you're trying to force some of that. So I think he's trying to find a balance there.
I think you saw it a couple of times, a drive and kick to the corner. Williams had a 3 out of it. O'Banner, I think, had another swing around 3. but it started with his penetration on Saturday night and ended up in good things for the Red Raiders, ultimately getting the win over Kansas State. All right, shift from the basketball conversation to the big news this week, Level, that OU and Texas are going to go ahead and exit early. They are going to, as of right now, leave at the end of the 2023-2024 academic year, which would mean as soon as baseball season's over, that sort of thing, they become SEC conference members. Was this a surprise to you? Because it felt like these conversations had almost ended, or at least publicly ended, a week ago or so.
Yeah, I guess this news ultimately doesn't surprise me. Any level of surprise actually comes from a week ago when it was reported,
right?
Hey, I think they're going to be in here, because that part is what surprised me.
Sure.
I was not expecting that at all. This ultimately, what has happened here is the end result that I did expect, and so we just had a kind of
the timing, I guess, is what felt like the surprise to it.
It was all negotiation. It was all like bluff calling. It was all, I mean, that's ultimately what this came down to, because I knew that Brett Yormark's preference was to allow or to move on from Oklahoma and Texas as quickly as possible, as long as it made sense for all involved. They clearly found something that worked for all parties, that everybody was okay with: the TV partners, the two leagues, the conference, just everybody involved here. And I think, the Big 12 gets some money. They also get the freedom of not having to, because I don't know if you knew this or not, they've actually been having conference meetings, okay? With athletic directors and all these things. They actually have been having two different sets of meetings. One that involves Oklahoma and Texas, and then one that involves everybody else with the new league going forward. And so they're trying to handle business and trying to figure out the future of what this league and trying to conduct business, whether it's be, expansion or future championship sites or, whatever it may be. And I think that they were just ready to kind of move on and conduct business, without Oklahoma and Texas, and that, and I would ask you this question: happy day or sad day when you find out they're ultimately going to be out sooner than later? You glad? You ready to move on?
Happy.
Kind of sad?
I'm ready to move on, but I wanted to make sure the Big 12 got theirs out of it. Like I did not want to see Texas or OU get any favors out of it, and it didn't seem that was the case with them paying the $100 million out. So I'm ready to get to the next era of the Big 12. That being said, I'll miss the rivalries. That's one of the great things about sports. I mean, there's nothing that really, quite frankly, there's nothing that gets the juices flowing like when Texas comes to town. It's just look at the atmosphere last year, and part of it was Chris Beard hate, but I mean, anytime they're here for football, great atmosphere. Anytime they're here for basically anything, people love to yell at people and burn orange. So it's a hobby of mine personally, but I don't know. And that's what I'll miss.
And so to follow up on that, I mean, like whenever Texas comes into town here early this week, from a basketball standpoint, theoretically, you just don't know. I doubt this is going to be the case, but it is definitely possible that you will not play them in Lubbock in basketball next year. If you keep if you keep an 18 game schedule, and you've got 14 teams in it, if you play everybody twice, that's 26 games, I think, if I'm doing the math right. Well, you're not going to play 26 league games. You're only going to play 18, is what they're kind of suggesting.
Sure.
And so you may play every team once, but what if that one time you play Texas is in Austin? I mean, there's all kinds of dynamics there. I would hope that you keep that as a home and home, at least for one more year, but you're not real sure, because that's the next. See, and that's part of why the conference part of it is trying to figure out,
it's tricky.
What is our basketball schedule going to look like? What does baseball schedule look like? Because I mean, we've got the football schedule, but now they need to kind of start to move on. So I guess, with the news of Oklahoma and Texas, I mean, you're done playing Oklahoma in football. Like with their trip here, and you beat them, that'll be it. I don't envision them on your schedule anymore, unless it's a bowl game or some sort of neutral site situation or whatever. But yeah, I think that ship has sailed. So, I mean, we're starting to kind of get some closure on all this stuff rather quickly when we've been wanting it. Now all of a sudden things are starting to fall in place, and now the Big 12 is going to be on the hunt for additions, and it's just a matter of when and how and whatever that might look like.
Yeah, I think that's the other news that's come out kind of as a parallel to the Big 12 news this week is the Pac-12 and what's been going on there, and the unrest towards George Kliavkoff, the commissioner over there. Arizona State's athletic director, kind of somewhat publicly vocal about the frustrations and meetings at SMU. I mean, they go from denying the Big 12 schools essentially a year ago to going and looking at SMU as a possible member institution. So there's a lot of, weird, murky future for the Pac-12. Are the doors back open on poaching there if you're Brett Yormark?
Oh, I think his. I think it would be naive to suggest that his main goal, or not to suggest, I should say, I want to make sure I phrase that correctly. I think he's in the business of trying to destroy the Pac-12. Now,
like that.
It's not that may be just collateral damage. I think ultimately he would love to poach and solidify his league for big picture. And if that means that the Pac-12 kind of falls apart, then, hey, sorry about it, but that's the reality of it. And it comes down to the conversation choice about, I mean, let's be honest, we talk about these quote unquote four corner schools. Do you even know why they call it that?
Because of the four corners in Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado.
I've got tired head from hearing the four corners.
They all touch each other.
Exactly. It's just like, it's like the four corner schools. It's just like this realignment term that is just like everybody's just.
It's easier than listing them all.
I guess
time,
so.
Right?
I guess so. Yeah.
But I get it.
But Oregon and Washington are the head of the list. I mean,
so what are the odds that the Big 12 could land those two schools?
Well, that depends on what the Big 10 wants. The Big 10 is going to get to call the shot here, and then.
But a brand new commissioner there, or
do they even have exactly? They don't even have one, and so the timing is all interesting right now, because I think if you're Brett Yormark, you have the opportunity to squeeze a little bit and kind of apply some pressure. And I just can't imagine that Oregon and Washington ultimately at the end of the day are going to sit back and go, SMU and San Diego State fix all of our problems. Like, we're good. We're going to go get the money that we want. I mean, you're reading these reports out there about how much they're behind in these conversations from a money standpoint. And, it's a no-brainer that if the Big Ten were to invite those two schools, they would jump at it. But and if so, that ends the Pac-12.
Sure.
It does, and then you start to figure out what is best for you on who to add. So all of these things are kind of linked up, and it's tricky, because I don't think Gonzaga and the UNLVs or whoever is going to have to wait, because I think that the main folks that you would love to add, and I don't pretend to know. Would they add just two? Would they add four? Would they go more than that? It probably all depends on who it is and what's available and what it comes with. But yeah, I think that that's next on the agenda now, because I think that you've heard Brett Yormark say TV deal done, figure out Oklahoma and Texas's future as quickly as we can, and expansion are my list to get done. And he's checked off 1 and 2. So expansion now moves to the top of the list because he's been getting stuff done rather quickly.
So just from a, football, what Chris Level would want to see, if you got to pick and say, this is what I want my big picture Big 12 to look like, what additions would you want to see made?
Well, if I got to golly, I think that's a loaded question, because I think if you could somehow add your Oregons and Washingtons and the four corner schools, if you want to, for me to overuse that term again, that's probably ideally, but I don't know what that's supposed to look like when you've got an 18 team league, which is what it would be, because you would be kind of a mega. But I would also say that I would probably even like trim Colorado out of the picture. I don't know if there's some, they just kind of fit geographically, but I don't know if you got to pick it. And I would even say that, maybe one of the Arizona schools you would cut out if you got. I just don't know. I don't know, like what are the parameters? Like, can we add as many as we want? Do we? But I just think like the Utahs, the Washingtons, the Oregons, and maybe University of Arizona, those are like stable, rock solid markets, programs, brands, all those things. And I think that all makes a ton of sense. But I think, does Colorado and Arizona State kind of come with? I just don't know. I'm not interested in the Cals and the Stanfords, the Washington States or the Oregon States. That you can miss me with all that. But
I'm wondering, like, is that a point where if you get to a 16 team or 18 team conference, does it get just too saturated? Because now you're extremely intimate with your other members. You get to know them very well.
But you also can't, if you have an opportunity to add those.
Oh yeah.
I just don't know if you could pass some of that stuff up, and then I think you figure out the rest. But yeah, you're right. It could be wildly confusing on how the schedules work and divisions. Do you have basically two conferences within one? I don't know.
Right now in the SEC, you got teams that don't play each other for
every 4
like,
5, 8 years.
Yeah, you got like 8-year gaps between playing at different places and stuff. So I mean, and that's 14 teams. You get to 16 or 18, it could really. But at the same time, like you said, if the money makes sense, there's some things you just have to pull the trigger on, and it'll be very interesting to watch what Brett Yormark does and what Pac-12 and the Big Ten, all of the dominoes that have to fall. But it's going to be interesting to watch over the next few months and probably still years. So
it'll start to shake out fairly quickly, I think. I can't tell you if it's a matter of days, weeks, or months, but because the Pac-12 is on the clock. They've been on the clock. That's why they're out scouring potential candidates. And then at some point, Kliavkov is going to say, because you don't need to go check out SMU. I mean, you already know what you're getting there. Are they willing to take less? Hell yeah, they're willing to take less. They'll answer whatever. If you want to call them at 3 a.m, they're going to take that call and say, I do.
But the SMU booty call.
It really comes down to what the rest of those institutions, what they're willing to sign off on.
Yeah.
And like, okay, am I willing to cast my lot with this collection of schools and offer up a grant of rights or whatever and lock myself in? And I just don't buy that is the case at this point. I don't buy it. I may be wrong, but I don't buy the fact that they would, some of these institutions would say, yes, lock me into a conference with San Diego State and SMU for the next 5 to 7 years with not as much money as maybe we were getting or same as, and with the chances that we could get offered from some other leagues, and then we can't say yes. So I don't believe that will happen.
And I mean, basically ESPN's bidding against itself in terms of the media rights at this point with the Pac-12.
Yeah. Well, that's why they've gone over to Amazon.
Yeah. So
yeah, they needed an outside entity. Yeah. And I thought it was pretty telling. This is a mad commissioner whenever he kind of takes a subtle shot at Brett Yormark and says something to the effect of, well, our deal is less because it's like if somebody across the street from you sells their house for a lot less, it kind of screws you over. This is what Kliavkov said about the Big 12 TV deal. And because Brett Yormark, he skipped to the front of the line and he looped him. And maybe there was more money to be had, but I think Yormark went for security and bird in the hand and got up front because at that point he now is in control.
Sure.
Whereas Kliavkov has no leverage, they have no control. Exactly. And I think that was an important kind of chess move that he was willing to make because in theory it could end up ending Kliavkov's conference. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I thought
it tells you a lot when you got some sour grapes.
Oh, and it's been funny to see Kliavkov towards Yormark when really his buddy in the Big Ten is the one who screwed him over the most, and by taking the LA schools, and he had never said anything bad about him. But
Yeah.
I mean, no big deal there. So now the last bit of news that came out this past week was some huge news for a lot of Red Raider fans everywhere. The Zach Thomas getting into the Hall of Fame after 4 years of being a finalist, finally gets into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Patrick Mahomes gets his second MVP award as well. And
within minutes of each other.
Yeah.
Within minutes of each other. Yeah, I think I've met Zach several times. Know his brother Bart really well, and I think Zach played at Tech whenever I was going to school there, and so I remember those games well. Him running into the bell after the interception against A&M, and all those kinds of things when you were really good at defense. And he was playing with Marcus Coleman and Monte Rager and all those Sean Banks and all those guys. But it, and I was a Cowboy fan, and I thought it was fun watching Zach play for the Cowboys. And obviously, he did most of his damage with the Dolphins. And I think Jimmy Johnson has always said, that this guy is one of the smartest, most instinctual football players that I've ever been around. Which for Jimmy Johnson to say that is a mouthful, because he was around a lot at the University of Miami and with the Cowboys and the like. But there's a picture that I've seen of Zach, I'm sure you've seen it as well, where when he's kind of told the news and he's just, you could tell he's overcome with emotion, and it really that really hits you.
Absolutely.
I mean, it hits you, because this is everything to these guys. They can't do any more on the field. Their career is over, and they're just like this stupid process of only so many guys that get voted in, and the game is completely different now than it was, and so stats are different, and the NFL is very particular about their Hall of Fame process, kind of like whereas the basketball kind of lets everybody in.
Sure.
And there's no rhyme or reason to it. And they have like a basketball Hall of Fame, and you could be overseas, you could be a college guy, you can be an NBA guy, you could whatever. But the MLB and NFL, well, they do it a bit trickier, and it's kind of
pretty exclusive, and
it's frustrating at times.
Sure it is.
But I was really pleased for Zach and his family, because he deserves it. I think he was, a prototypical middle linebacker, in that he just was always around the football, and he's a prototypical Red Raider from the standpoint of never the fastest, never the biggest. But squeezed everything out of his, what he was given. And I think that's what, he deserves a ton of credit, man. I mean, I just so very, very happy for him, and for obviously Pat too. He's the best player in the NFL right now.
Yeah, absolutely. He is. And he's been such a great face for the franchise on the other side of the program, Texas Tech program, for on the other side of being a Red Raider. So it's awesome to see all of that. Great news for the Red Raiders there. One last question from Matt. He asks, Level, what's your favorite Super Bowl food? If you got to pick one, what are you going with? You a party guy, or you
9-layer dip?
I don't know if you're messing with me or not.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I don't know why you would be saying that. No, 9-layer dip would be one of my favorite.
Well, like, what's in the 9 layers?
You never heard of that?
I've seen it. I've never tried it.
It's like bean dip, guacamole, like a layer of cheese, olives, like a sour cream concoction. There's a green onion layer. There's anyway, just dip it. It's just it's really good. You dip Fritos or tortilla chips in it, and you got a little bit of everything in there. How
you get like deep enough if there's 9 layers to get all you need to?
Well, you just they're not like thick layers. They're all just like a layered in the little dish that you make it with. You can buy it at the store.
It's just an everything dip.
Places. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the go-to of all the.
You've never heard of that?
I have heard of it. I've just never had it. I've seen it at the store.
No, I think it's a typical tailgate.
Okay.
Super Bowl kind of.
I wasn't expecting that answer. I thought
typically at my house we do nachos and milkshakes. That's typically when it's just my family, we make
Together?
nachos and milkshakes. Yeah.
So you eat the nachos while drinking the milkshake?
Sure. Yeah. And like a malt, whatever.
Yeah, that's just
Yeah.
an unusual combo, but I'm not judging. And
Yeah,
nachos are a meal.
There's actually a place in the Midwest. You've never heard of this combination either. There's a place in the Midwest. I'm trying to remember exactly where it is, but their famous cuisine is chili and cinnamon rolls.
Okay, I have heard this only
Yeah.
because
They go together.
our buddy Clint Scott is a weirdo from the Midwest, and he told
Okay.
me about the chili and cinnamon rolls together. I'm
Yeah.
like, you guys are freaks. So yeah, okay. Well, I mean, the nachos and milkshakes, I would definitely try it. Now, nachos are a meal, right?
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah.
1,000%.
You got a friend that's still extremely confused on that, but that's
he's not
okay.
really my friend.
That's true. Colleague is a better word for it.
Yeah.
All right, Level. Well, enjoy your day. Hopefully we get to talk some more winning.
Okay. Sounds good. Hey, and sorry for my voice. It's kind of jacked up.
Oh,
Been
no, you're
battling the crud, but tried to play hurt today, but apologize for that. But yeah, thanks for we're old enough. You said episode 25. We're old enough now to go rent a car and
that's
everything.
right.
We're good to go. Yeah.
No doubt. Level, have a good week now.
Hey, thanks, Woodman. Appreciate it. Keep hope alive.
That's Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. You've been tuned in to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.